Everyday stress management seems to be something we are all chasing. And so this works. Our purpose is to help people to manage their nervous system so that they can be better able to manage their stress on a daily basis. My name is Dr. Anna Persaud. I am the CEO of This Works. And today I am joined by Dr. Lana Gault, who is a medical doctor and also a practitioner in wellbeing and aesthetic medicine. And Dr. Lana and I are going to talk about how stress is first picked up in the body. How does it manifest? What can we look for? What are the signs? And then what can we do about it? We're going to cover burnout, which is very much linked to occupational stress, but also what a dysregulated nervous system looks like. And importantly, what can we do about it? What tools can we use on a daily basis to give us empowerment and be better able to manage our stress and live a fuller, better life? So I'm here today with Dr. Lana Gault, and we met a few months ago, and we were actually attending a meeting talking about women in business.
Yeah.
And you are a very entrepreneurial woman, and you've got a medical background, so you're a trained doctor, but you're also working in the wellness space.
Yeah.
That's why we're really delighted you've come to talk to us today, this in our stress edition. So Lana, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
So I am a medical doctor working in the UK. I also have my own aesthetics business. Yeah. So I'm combining a bit of the aesthetics with clinical medicine. I also have a strong interest in holistic and wellbeing care, trying to combine both the traditional clinical medicine with the wider aspect of people's health and looking at other ways that they can complement clinical medicine. So that's why when I met you, I was very interested in the brand and everything it stands for, particularly because there is a lot of science behind it, and it's a very science-backed brand that can stand by what they claim.
And I think this is this overlap that we have, your business and This Works, is, you know, we are a science-backed business and we pursue science behind all of the products, the protocols, but we work in a wellness space and we sit alongside traditional medical treatments. And I have huge respect for the medical profession, but I know through my own lived experience that actually it doesn't always meet our needs as individuals. And there are other ways that we can manage our well-being. And I think, am I right? This is where you also sit.
Yeah, exactly. It's about not looking at one solution to your problem or many problems. It's about looking at other aspects of your life, looking at your physical health, your mental health, your relationships in your life, and kind of combining everything. So whether that be your yoga class or whether that be going to speak to your doctor, it's good to know that you've got a good baseline with your habits and your wellness products so that you can then handle everyday stress so it doesn't go too far.
This is more and more what we see and what we hear is that the medical profession can, it's powerful. It gives us diagnostics, but as individuals, we also want to take some control back ourselves for our well-being, and we want to make choices for ourselves that improve our well-being in the immediacy, but also in the long term as we look at longevity and wanting to push out how well we are for as long as possible, so that our health span is as long as it can be. We are here really because this is the stress edition from This Works. We as a business are very much vested in helping people to understand how their body affects their mind, and this understanding, which you obviously are going to tell us so much more about with your background. And burnout, like actually this is something, this word's been around a long time, right? It's not a new expression, but tell me from your medical world and your well-being expertise, like how is burnout being referred to these days? What are people seeing? How do they first report burnout? What do they come in with? Which symptoms?
So first, I think it's good that the word burnout is being used. What it is thrown around quite a lot, particularly in social media. So it's good to get the definition right and understanding what exactly it is. It can present in many different ways. And actually the official definition of it relates it back to occupational stress. So people may think it's just about relationship stress or just everyday stress, but particularly it relates back to work-related stress.
Interesting.
Which is something that not everyone understands, which is why it's used maybe inappropriately sometimes. It is characterized by persistent fatigue, and also you kind of lose your feedback mechanism of when things are going well. So you feel like your performance is inhibited. There's many aspects of burnout, but it's important to understand that it typically relates to work-related stress, and that could be paid work, volunteering work, but it's particularly to do with work.
So could you, if you were a young mother who was at home with her child, would you be able to say you had burnout?
Absolutely, because that's a type of work. It's not paid for, but as many full-time mums know, that's a full-time job in themselves. So yes, it can relate to many aspects, but I think it's also important to realise that although it relates to work, it can bleed into other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
So whether that reduces your resilience to be able to handle a friendship problem, or maybe problem with your children, everything builds on that. So whether your work is causing the major majority of your stress, it is important to realise that this can have an effect in other aspects of your life as well.
Can we also then talk about nervous system coming under strain, which isn't linked to work, but is linked to other factors, just so we can educate ourselves and our community about that?
Yeah, so we've talked a bit about burnout, but there is an overlap between burnout and regular stress and everyday stress. So it's important to know that stress is actually physiological and it's needed. For example, when you wake up in the morning, you need to have an increase in the stress hormone, which is known as cortisol. That gets you up in the day. Whether you're sick, your stress levels increase to try and combat the infection that you have. So there's a physiological good aspect of being stressed. However, it's when stress is chronic and it's there for an abnormal length of time, that's when we start to see physiological changes in your ability to deal with other stressors. You may find that your heart rate starts to go up at times randomly. You become more anxious. There's a lot of other symptoms that show when someone is stressed chronically. And it's important to know that there's early signs. And then when we identify the early signs, that can prevent longer term effects.
Okay, let's go on. What are the early signs then in your, medical experience? What do people most commonly come and, may disclose to you in a conversation?
So persistent fatigue is probably something that is quite common in someone who's stressed and early signs of stress. Maybe their sleep is disturbed, which is relevant for this works, obviously. Other things can be that they just don't feel right. They can't put their finger on it. Their reduced ability to be able to handle everyday situations. So they feel a wee bit more irritable and they just can't cope as well as what they had been, whether it be a few months before or a year before. But it is a gradual thing and there's a spectrum of stress. And at the early stages, this is kind of what we look for, but then it'll tend to go into later signs and maybe more serious symptoms of stress.
What would they look like?
So stress can dampen your immune system, which means that you might be getting regular colds, flus. You just can't fight your regular cold. Irritability, as well as the inability to enjoy what you typically enjoy. For example, whether you like to go play tennis, you're not really getting the same dopamine hit anymore. We call this anhedonia in medicine. And that kind of means that your ability to enjoy your everyday activities that you find that would have made you feel happy and have a buzz about you, you're not getting that spike of dopamine anymore and you become a bit more blunted.
It's really interesting. Am I right that one person's stress could be another person's excitement? And stress is very, very personal, and your ability to tolerate different situations is very much dependent on your upbringing, your previous experiences, your feelings of whether you feel resourced to handle the experience. Just tell us a bit more about that. I think that's fascinating.
Yes, definitely. And this is something that I'm really interested in. I really think that your upbringing, your childhood trauma as such really affects how you deal with life as an adult. If growing up in childhood you had some trauma and then in adulthood you find that you aren't able to build relationships as well because maybe there was a problem with the relationship with a parent whenever you were younger, or if you were in a very high stressed environment as a child growing up, then when you grow up to be an adult, maybe you're being super vigilant, you're always on the defense, you're always looking out for something to go wrong. And this can have an effect in so many aspects of your life, whether that be work or relationships. And it's important to establish and look back at your childhood and identify these things so that you can have an outsider's perspective on it and notice it before it actually becomes a problem.
So the idea of kind of psychological awareness of the things that stimulate feelings of stress, but also coupled with nervous system sensitivities to stimulus that you may have been exposed to when you were younger, that creates a bias in the way that your nervous system interprets your environment. We have been discussing this a lot in our business around nervous system care, and how the way that an individual interprets the environment is very much based on the nervous system's learnings throughout childhood, very much early development, but beyond that. And so you just talk a little bit about what a dysregulated nervous system means, whether that's acute or chronic.
A dysregulated nervous system can show up in many ways. Typically, this could be if you're feeling stressed, your heart rate will go up. You will feel the palpitations in your chest. It could also be that your blood pressure goes up. You may not get symptoms of those things, but chronically over time, if you've got persistent high blood pressure, high heart rate, it increases your cardiovascular risk of having heart attacks or strokes. And stress isn't just something that we should take lightly. It has a major effect long term on your health. And in a way, we want to live as well as we can for as long as we can. So it's about preventing those things from becoming a chronic issue. So identifying them when they're acute and then stopping it from becoming a chronic problem so that it does have impact on, maybe it is your memory or your cognition, or it could be that your heart health is poor because of the chronic stress.
The idea of a nervous system, I mean, my understanding around the way that the nervous system works, you said it at the beginning, like we need stress, we need that fight or flight response. It gives us motivation, it gives us focus, it gives us the ability to think quickly, to adapt, to pivot. But we also need the rest and digest system for other processes, resting, obviously, sleeping, digesting, intimacy, sexual reproduction. And this idea that humans evolved to be able to adapt to their environment, and that the autonomic nervous system will respond accordingly. My understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the system is biased towards the sympathetic as a way of survival. So we would naturally be dominant in the sympathetic, and so that's natural. That's natural that under stress we would be more vigilant. When threatened, whether it's with an illness or whether it's threatened with an environment stressful, you are going to be more in that activated state. You are going to be more feel a sense of agitation. You may feel on edge, and that's to protect us. But we also want to be able to respond in the moment to the stress and then go back to a baseline that is more comfortable. But I think I'm right in saying that more and more people find themselves stuck in this more fight or flight state and less able to return to a baseline when they choose. Is this true? Is this what you see?
Yeah, I definitely know that when you are in that fight or flight mode, everything feels hyped up. You're ready to go, and you are ready to have a fight. And that was useful many, many, many years ago when we were running away from a tiger. It was a survival mechanism. However, it's inappropriate in certain situations, particularly in the modern world, that we don't always need to be in that fight or flight mode. And we need to strengthen, like you said, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. And there's a nerve called the vagus nerve that if we strengthen that really helps with the rest and digest or parasympathetic nervous system. And there are many ways that you can strengthen that. But like you said, it's about getting the balance. And we maybe don't have the balance right as a society. And it's important that we need to put effort and time into building a vagus nerve strength, and the parasympathetic nervous system.
I 100% agree. I'm very strongly opinionated on this, and read The Polyvagal Theory by Stephen Porges, which is his original book, which is fascinating and now has a lot more support behind it than it did when it was first released. And I think you make an excellent point that we as individuals can influence our experience, but we shouldn't be passive, because passivity has led us into feeling more agitated than we like, because technology and the way that information is sent to us through all of our gadgets and our phones, etc., unsolicited, often keeps us in a state of fight or flight, whether we want to be or not, because that's how the information is served up. If we want to create a balance in our nervous system, we have to strengthen the polyvagal. What are the best ways to do that?
So there's obviously a number of ways, and every person is going to be different. I've done a lot of self-work and self-development myself. So from a personal perspective, as well as like a medical standpoint, and the fact that I've met many patients, both in actually many settings, particularly one in addiction setting. I used to work in an addiction centre, and it really struck out to me that regular habits, habit stacking, all of those kind of things are what enable you to be able to handle stressful situations. So personally for me, I found journaling really, really helpful. Things like yoga, meditation, for example, in the addiction setting, watching the patients do their regular meditation and yoga sessions, you could see removing the stimulus of Instagram, TikTok, social media, and actually bringing it back to thinking about their cognition and strengthening their parasympathetic nervous system, and just looking back at their childhood work as well. There's so many options out there at the minute, and it's important to find what sticks with you. So it's okay that I could say, yes, go and book it into a yoga class, but if you're not going to stick to that, that's not going to work. And some people get benefit from speaking to others, and some people get benefit from sitting alone with a candle lit and doing some journaling. So it's about what is going to stick, rather than these are the 5 things that someone should do.
And that's an excellent point. We see that too, and from the literature and the work that we've done is it's the consistency of the habit that builds the association between a stimulus and how you respond. So if you can associate in a stressful situation, if I, for instance, for me, it might be a breath technique, because a longer exhale in order to trigger that parasympathetic through the longer exhale to inhale. In a stressful situation, I will immediately bring this breath work into play, and my body now knows, because my heart rate will slow, I won't get the panicky feeling, that's okay. You can cope in this stressful situation, because I've separated, if you like, the automatic response of my nervous system to the stimulus. And I think that only comes with practice. It only comes with self-awareness. And so I think this is, I think what you're also saying, and I agree, what works for me isn't going to work for you necessarily, but there are some well-backed scientific methods, I think, where you can slow the heart rate.
Yeah. And you said it. Breath work in particular.
Yeah.
Box breathing, everything like that is very helpful. But like you said, in that acute situation, it's important that you've got things to look back on and say, okay, I know breath work's going to help. I'm going to hold my breath and exhale. Or grounding techniques. Years ago, I used to find grounding techniques very helpful. So whether that be you have to choose something that you smell, choose something that you hear, choose something that you see, and choose something that you feel. That was really helpful to me, that in that moment, that's what you can go back to.
I've heard the same, and I use that same technique to orientate yourself to the immediacy of where you are, isn't it? It's, if you pay attention, as you've said, to what you see, something in the room, something you can hear, something you can smell, something you can see, the brain occupies itself with these senses and takes the focus off that fear circuitry of prediction or catastrophizing or worst case scenario thinking, or, which is for some people becomes a way of thinking all the time when there is some kind of potential risk or threat to them. And I think that practice of learning how to ground in the present moment is very powerful, free.
Yeah.
Very quietly done. You don't need a therapist in the room. I think that's a really, for me, I found that also very, very effective.
Yes. And I think as well, it's really important that, okay, you could do all this work in your own time, but it's something that's really hard to measure as an individual, but it's something that it's cumulative. It all adds up, so that you may not notice after a month that every stressful situation you're able to ground yourself or take a breath. But actually 6 months down the line, after doing breathwork protocols, actually the things that would have stressed you before maybe don't stress you as much anymore, or it's the time that you're stressed reduces. And actually, as women, there's a study that shows that women are 32% more likely to be affected by burnout than men. So it's really important that we build these daily habits so that we can deal with high pressure situations. And actually, individuals who are in high pressure jobs as well are at an increased risk of burnout. So taking it back to even the burnout situation, it's important that we understand our vulnerabilities and work to build the strength to be able to cope with that.
I think that is an excellent point about understand our vulnerabilities, because for me personally, we were talking earlier, I have an element of neurodiversity, and I find certain things difficult. Transitions are hard for me. Getting places on time, my team will tell you, I'm always late. I can't park. I don't know how to park. I can do lots of things, but there are certain things I find more difficult. And actually knowing I have these vulnerabilities and other people knowing, I plan, I try my best to plan around them. But I also, when I know there's a lot of stressful situations coming, I try to make my life easier. And because I know my weaknesses, if you like.
Yeah.
And, I think that's, we can't all be excellent and perfect at everything, whether that's because we're biologically challenged or, wherever we are in our lives, it's okay. And we have to plan for that.
Yeah. And even taking it back to a medical perspective, prevention to me is better than cure.
Always.
And like I said, we want to live better for longer. And it's about preparing, whether that be preparing for example, today, preparing to come to this podcast. I wanted to have my outfit sorted and everything. But then I felt more relaxed coming into it. So like you said, if you know that you've got a stressful day coming up, what can you take control of? Because that's going to be beneficial for you in the long term.
I think that word control, one of my favourite words, I'm trying not to laugh about. Because having a sense of agency in a situation and feeling you are resourced reduces your stress.
Yeah.
But for all of us, there will always be things that are out of our control. We also have to accept that. And then I think this piece around, I'm sure you've had the expression, the psychological window of tolerance, within which you are operating in an effective, adaptive way. So you would be stressed, but you are dealing with that. Stress is a part of life. It's part of being human. So we accept stress, but we're still regulated. We're still responding appropriately. We're not feeling hugely, a sense of discomfort. So that window of tolerance and building the window of tolerance, we work with a clinical psychologist, Lauren Baird, and she has, we've done lots of talks with Lauren on this idea of the window of tolerance and how creating habits, as we've talked earlier about the 5 kind of paying observations in a room, etc., can help us to widen that window of tolerance, which then means we are better able to manage the stressors that are inevitable, that we can't control. And, I think that your world of, bridging between medical and more wellbeing orientated methodologies is very important for helping us build that window of tolerance. And everyone's tolerance is different.
Yeah.
And everybody's starting point, mine was quite narrow, and I've had to work hard at broadening my window of tolerance, and I will continue to have to work hard. So a question around challenges, right? So if we've been talking about burnout and stress, but also how do we help to broaden our tolerance window by gradual exposure. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yes. And actually, when you were saying that, I was thinking it's also important that, like control, okay, we feel like everything's on our shoulders. We have to manage every single stressful situation that comes into our life. And if you don't have control over that, it can be really detrimental. And I personally as well, I love a bit of control, probably too much. Mm-hmm. And when things are out of my control, as a doctor as well, it does get a bit stressful. But I do think what's really beneficial is actually looking around you. How can you build and outsource the areas that you aren't good at, like you said, so that when you do have a stressful situation, you can pick up the phone and call your sister or another family member or your boyfriend, your husband, and ask them, look, I'm struggling a bit today. Could you help me? Or just bounce ideas off. It's not always on you. So it's important to look outside of yourself, and you don't have to control everything, and everything won't be in your control, but it's about identifying what you're good at, as well as working on the things that you're not good at. For example, whether it be timekeeping, or maybe you do need to spend more time strengthening the vagus nerve. But do what you can, but don't feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, because then you're just going to fall.
Yes, I agree with that. And I've learned in my career, because I'm literally not good at everything at all, that I need to have people who I can call on, who work alongside me, who complement me. And that's really important, I think, is in careers, because otherwise it can feel incredibly overwhelming. But I would also say that outside of the workplace, where you're facing things that are genuinely not somebody you could call and they can help you with, that concept of radical acceptance, of being able to process things that are stressful in the fact that you don't know where they're going to end. It's ambiguity humans don't like, right? They don't like not knowing. And learning how to sit with ambiguity, or not knowing what the conclusion is going to be, is something that we have to be able to live with. Humans always have. But I think technology has given us so many tools and feelings of being in control when we're actually not. So when we do face things that we can't control, we then find that very distressing. I think a lot of the kind of existential stress people feel is because they can't control the world. And yet learning how to live in it has got to be our focus, whatever is going on around us. And I think that's where being aware of your nervous system's response and how to influence the nervous system so you can still experience life in its fullness comes in. And that's from my personal view, but also from where we sit as a brand, when we work in the sleep space and we talk to people a lot about the issues associated with sleep. And it's complex sleep. It's very emotional as a subject. People who sleep poorly really struggle. It affects their lives so badly. And so we talk about creating these rituals of ownership of your own nervous system that help you to take yourself into rest and relaxation and eventually sleep regardless of what is going on.
Yes, I listen. I don't know whether I'm sure you do. Joe Dispenza is a big name that I listen to, and he says your thoughts create your reality, which I think is so important to have that in your mind, that if you're thinking bad things, this may lead to bad things. Now, it's not always true, but it's important. I've found that really helpful to cope with many stresses in my life. I also heard this quote the other day that said, your body can't identify the difference between nerves and excitement. For example, if you're nervous about something, if you tell your body, this is excitement, and actually get excited by not being in control and be excited for what could happen, because maybe if you've got something in your head that you're hoping will go really, really well, maybe it's actually going to turn out even better than you could have imagined.
I think that's so true. And I can think of examples in my life where I did a live BBC TV news show and I was very nervous and I had to step into the camera and I thought, I have to make a choice here. I'm either going to embrace this and think this is amazing, I love it, or I'm just absolutely going to throw up. And I had to do the former. And I walked on it and it was fine. But I remember that mental switch of this is really exciting rather than this is really terrifying. It's really interesting you say that the nervous system doesn't know which one. I think this is also true. I read a really interesting analysis about athletes on the starting line of a race or facing competitive threat.
Okay.
And their performance in terms of how they perform within the race or on the pitch is linked to whether they perceive themselves as being resourced sufficiently, their self-efficacy. And if they feel threatened because they don't think they're fast enough, good enough, done enough training, their coach is going to shout at them, they're going to let their parents down, their performance will be less than if they stand there thinking, I've got this. And I think it's to do with the neurotransmitters that are released. One thinking this is an exciting competition, the other one thinking I'm under threat. And actually the availability of oxygen to the muscles is affected negatively if they think they're under threat, and the performance is lowered as a result, which I think is really fascinating. The psychological coaching in a sporting environment, but also in life.
Yes, and it's also really exciting that you can change your brain, the neuroplasticity, the ability to make those new connections. And maybe the first time when you go into that interview, okay, you're a bit nervous and you're trying to tell yourself, be excited. Very difficult on the day and when you're first experiencing that. But 10 interviews down the line, if you've told yourself that whole time, this is really exciting, then you do become more excited for it. And then you do maybe do a better interview because of that. But it's about the repeated stimulus and creating the connections in your brain so that does happen.
Oh, and that's just genius. What you've said is, I think, so powerful, because I have a young child. And so I've worked hard with my younger child where he has an exam and he automatically associates exam with worry that he isn't going to perform. And we have tried to change that to, you do an exam, this is just about, the outcome of that day. It doesn't inform your future. And taking the weight out of every time there is an exam. And building positive associations between a potentially threatening stimulus is, to your point, I think, if I understand you, this is how the neuroplasticity, this is how the pathways get connected, as opposed to fearful ones, which is very easy for a brain to link threats to a situation because we're primed for that, right?
Particularly what you were saying earlier about even in childhood, your brain has been not tricked, but it's been told to act a certain way in certain situations. But we have the ability to change that. And that's so exciting. And whether that be through smell, through touch, through whatever you want to do to change that, you can create new neuron connections so that you have a different reality.
And that is beautiful. And that's exactly what we've been saying this summer in our body care campaign, that it's called Body to Mind. And the idea that using our body care with intentional techniques of touch and smell, we can change how the mind feels, basically what we think. And if we keep these practices going, even though we may have had struggles before, even though we may be older, we can still create new associations, new pathways in our brains, and that's hope for everyone, I think.
Yeah, and it's also something that you can share with family and friends, whether that be that, I've just bought a relative's, for example, like a new candle that has this particular smell, and we create the ritual of doing journaling together once a week, just so that you build your resilience even together. It doesn't always have to be alone, and if you can do it as a community, we know that getting the feedback from community is also really beneficial. And it's the tribe mentality. You want to have your tribe, and you want to build that network around you that's going to support you in times of need. And actually it's like giving someone a gift, whether that be through a smell. Like, you are giving them a gift of creating a ritual, which not everyone is grateful for your initial suggestions, and sometimes it needs to come from them. But subtle suggestions, whether that be, let's do journaling together, or do you want to go out for a walk and we'll talk about our struggles at the minute. It's about spreading any stress you have. And like I said earlier, if things are out of your control, see if you can outsource it and build a ritual with someone else as well.
So this is the idea, I think, of co-regulation. So you regulate your nervous system through other people or pets. Pets are great for regulating nervous systems. and spreading your nervous system needs across not just one individual, but maybe a number, and maybe also maybe you belong to a group of people. But I think what you're saying is that the nervous system, the brain, when it's with other brains in real life, you can create a sense of calm, because humans didn't live in isolation. We didn't evolve alone. There is a need to self-regulate. Otherwise, you create very needy people that aren't able to calm and soothe themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's a need for that. I think that's where it begins.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a really important element of finding other people to co-regulate with.
And like we said earlier, it's not going to help. One thing isn't going to help for everyone, but find your thing that you can start to build on and practice, because we want to be able to keep our health well for a long period of time. And I just find this all very, very interesting, and it's really exciting that there's so much new technology out there that we are going to be able to self-regulate a lot quicker and easier because of the technology out there.
I agree with that. I also think we talked about evaluating the nervous system. We talk about it at This Works, because I think an awareness of if I do this, if I've spoken, if I've performed a ritual, let's say, how has that affected my nervous system, so that you can use that as a directional feed to the brain to know this is calming because look how I feel, or my data tells me this. And so whether you're using a ring or a watch to measure your heart rate variability, you could also, if you don't use technology, you can also self-evaluate, so that in a situation that's stressful, you may ask yourself, where are you on a 1 to 10? I'm a 10. Okay, you're very, very stressed. Well, let's do this. Breathe. I want you to exhale for 6 and inhale for 4. I want you to repeat that 7 times. I want you to drop your shoulders, look into the distance. Okay, you've done that 7 times. Now where are you? I'm a 7. And you've seen yourself, simply by doing that, you've taken your perceived internal stress from a 10 to a 7. Nothing's changed around you. You've changed.
Yeah.
And you've done that yourself. And then your brain says, oh, that's interesting. Okay, now we're going to do it again. Now where are you? I'm a 5. Okay, that's a 5. You've gone from a 10 to a 5 in 3 minutes. Let's do this again. And actually, that you as an individual identifying that you can take yourself from feelings of great distress down to something that is manageable without any intervention or anything else changing your environment is hugely powerful. And then you bring in some kind of psychological tool that helps you, whether it's you're bringing in someone else's perspective, whether you're using radical acceptance, whether you may use a prayer, whatever your thing is, so that you can be comfortable with what you're experiencing psychologically. I think this is what I've seen working. I've tried it myself. I think it's very powerful. This is a season of exams. So we talked about stress, and I think this is going to be a thing, whether you're a parent or whether you are a student. What's your best advice to students sitting exams?
So for me, I find from personal experience, a bit like what we were saying for regulation, find what works for you, whether for studying, whether that's writing notes or bouncing off peers. All that kind of thing for studying is very, very helpful. But dealing with the stress, I find taking myself out of the situation, whether that walking out of the library and going for a 10-minute walk every hour or every 2 hours. And it's grounding techniques as well. And it's also taking yourself out of the situation and observing it from an outsider perspective. So a bit like what you were saying to me earlier today about your son, this is an exam for now, be in the present moment, but we'll work through whatever happens, whether the exam goes well or it doesn't. It's not an end of life experience.
Yeah, I think it's very well said. And I have to manage my younger child now through exams. I've done it already before, and you have to be the stable parent that gives them perspective. But I think from a nervous system point of view, it's inevitable that the fear of failure, the fear of consequence, puts the brain into alert. It's going to be activated. It feels a threat, even though it's not really a threat. It's perceived as a threat. And then the job of the student is to try to move their brain from what would maybe too much overwhelm, too much activation, into something that's optimal for performance. Too little would lead to lethargy, poor performance. You wouldn't be able to pull the information. How did you stay in that optimal performance zone? So you said you went for regular awards, but in an exam itself, what did you do?
Well, I feel like I've made my mistakes too. And I probably was burnt out at one point. And actually 47% of medical students can say that they are burnt out and they relate to burnout. So I completely get it. But looking back now and even over time, it's easy to say, but preparation was key. And that really helped me. However, in the times I did get stressed, like I said, a walk in nature, taking the dog a walk, for example, like you said, you can co-regulate with animals, and meeting up with a friend who is not a student for coffee, just for a different kind of conversation. And okay, we say that social media can be very harmful. Sometimes scrolling for 10 minutes on a park bench is actually exactly what you need. And sometimes you need a bit of brain dead TV or YouTube videos just to take yourself out of that, because you can get really, really caught up. And for me, at the end of the day, what I tended to do was have a list of the things I had done. So you still get the dopamine hit of saying, oh, I've done that today and I'm really proud of myself. Or at the start of your day, say, I've got these 3 things I want to do, and if I get those done, then I'll be very happy. Be ambitious. So have things that you actually do need to do, but don't overshoot, because then that's when the stress really kicks in.
And I think this is why translating that into an exam situation, doing practice papers timed, creates a sense of kind of the environment that you are going to face. And the brain has now had to pull the information in a time situation. And so in the exam, it already is familiar. Somebody that works for me also used to wear their school uniform when they did their exams. So they knew how it would feel to have the scratchy collar around the neck while they always had to perform. So I think that just as a technique and linking that back to the brain and what the brain doesn't know, it's, if you create the same situation at home when it doesn't matter at all, then you go into the situation, the brain's prepared, it understands, it performs. And I think that may be, a good technique. We also talk about really, really huge importance of sleep for people in exam season, and how the short-term memory is protected by good quality sleep, how the midterm, shuffling things from short to mid-term to the long-term memory is so important, and how consolidation takes place at night during your REM sleep.
I personally have had that experience. I find if I've gone into an exam having a really good night's sleep, and okay, I could have maybe revised for another 2 hours, but it's knowing when to close the book and say, do you know what, the things I've learned today, I'm going to consolidate them with a really good quality 8 hours of sleep and wake up feeling refreshed, rather than being wired and tired with caffeine the next day and just hyper, and you can't focus then. Whereas having the ability to focus and be calm in those situations is worth more than the extra 2-3 hours or the all-nighter of revision. With a bit of knowledge, I found in my second degree, I valued sleep so much more. And even in a working environment, actually, finishing a long day of work, sometimes you do want to just watch TV or doom scroll. And like I said, during revision, that's actually okay for maybe 10 minutes. But just before you go to sleep, we've talked about rituals. You've had a long day of work. Don't come back and start doing something that's going to keep you up at night. You don't want to have that really high dopamine hit just before you go to sleep. You want to create a ritual where you're calm, you're regulated, and you could use breath work in those times, or smell or touch, so that you do have that deep sleep, particularly in exam period, creating those rituals.
Yeah, no. There's actually a really interesting study that shows that if you inhale something during the day, like my deep sleep pillow spray, and then you spray it on your pillow at night, it facilitates memory consolidation.
Wow.
So that might be something for people to think about. It's an interesting paper on that shows the role of aroma in helping memory to be consolidated during the sleep phase if you're also inhaling it overnight.
I might have to use that myself.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Wow. That's what I tell my kids. As you said right at the beginning, you have an aesthetic practice. You work in aesthetic medicine, which is definitely something our consumers are really interested in. How does stress show itself in the skin? Because people didn't used to realize that there was a pathway between stress and skin. What do we need to know?
I think it's important to know that the body is just not one thing. So the skin, the gut, the brain, it's all connected. And when we're stressed, that increases chemicals within the body that increase inflammation. Inflammation is related to many things in the body, whether that be a leaky gut or aches and pains in your joints. But relating it back to skin, we find that the skin barrier tends to be broken, and as a result, you may get breakouts. As we age, we lose 1% of collagen every year from the age about 25 to 30. And actually, inflammation causes an increase in breakdown in a structure called collagen, which is important. For collagen makes your skin look nice and healthy and refreshed. And when we start to break down that collagen, that's when we start to look tired and aged, and your skin might not look as hydrated. So when we're in a state of stress and inflammation, you may have increased appearance of aging.
Yeah.
Your skin may break out. We see that there's an increase in hormones that increase your risk of having things like acne. So it's important to understand that stress, it doesn't just affect your heart, or it doesn't just affect your mood or your brain, but actually it can be seen physically in your skin. And I know even a stressor could be that you've had a really heavy weekend and your skin breaks out because your food's been off, your diet, you've drank too much. All those things add up, but particularly chronic stress, if you're getting chronic degradation of your collagen and your skin isn't able to renew as well, you're not able to rebuild any collagen, these are the things that contribute to the appearance of dull skin, that it does look a bit aged.
We also talked about another stress sign that people, and I think I've definitely suffered from this, and I think you said the same, aches and pains in the body that are random, that I went and had all kinds of investigations into, but actually they didn't find anything. And eventually it was put down to stress.
I had a similar experience. I had years of testing, of investigations, lab work, and nothing was adding up. There was no through line in between everything. Doctors were saying it could be this, could be that. And it was very frustrating. And actually that adds to stress as well.
Yeah, that causes another stress
Exactly.
cycle. Health anxiety.
Yeah. And ironically, as a doctor, you would think that I would have this all in my head and I would identify it. But when you're in it, you don't see it. So I think after I ticked all the boxes of it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. And the more I read about the gut-brain axis, for example, I realised that actually maybe this actually is stress, anxiety. I would have got severe stomach cramps. I'd ended up in the emergency department many times with these kind of pains, thinking it was something really serious. And actually stress is really serious, and anxiety and mental health is really serious, but it was coming out in a physical way. And it's important to look around and ask others, like, what do you think that I appear more stressed than usual? Sometimes that's a better indicator, because it's very difficult when it's yourself. But it is important to also know that once you identify that, you can go back and you can fix it. And that's not to say that that won't ever happen to me again. I have had times where my stomach's played up within even the past year, but I can now identify that it's because of this stressful week. And it's a bit of a relief being able to say that.
I have been obsessed with red light technology for the last 5 years in particular, since I had my second hip operation and was looking for a way to speed up the recovery, the scar, the inflammation, the pain. And from my own experience, I am a firm believer that red light has a powerful and effective use for many things in our health and well-being, for our skin texture, for the firmness of our skin, for treating cellulite, scars, and hair growth. And so my job at This Works as CEO and also as scientific lead is to work with my colleagues and to find the most effective products that we can possibly bring to the consumer. So I'd like to introduce you to Fraser Fergie, who has been working with me for many years, over 7 years, as product director, also a fellow scientist, a cosmetic scientist and general nerd.
Yeah.
So we love to work together, Fraser and I. And this project that has now come to completion, which we call the Red Light Project, has had many interesting twists and turns.
It has, yeah.
So Fraser, let's start with Red Light. You are the technical man. And one of the things I said to you was we need to make sure that when This Works launches a Red Light, that we can reassure our consumer, first of all, it's safe, it's effective, and that they know what to expect. So talk me through what you did to give that guarantee.
And it was a really interesting piece of work that we looked at. We didn't go straight in at who can provide it, what's the cost, what's the packaging looking like. We really want to understand, as you said, the science behind red light, because we knew from your experiences that it is something that can have a real positive impact in people's lives in a multitude of areas. So we conducted quite a thorough literature review. And this was literature, not just articles on the web, but published peer-reviewed articles, as if we were writing a dissertation almost, or a thesis on this project, of looking at, were they placebo studies, were they blind, looking at the power levels of the product, the energy levels of the product, and importantly, the wavelengths as well. All of that helped us inform not just how we would design the device in terms of its output of wavelengths of energy, but also in the way of how much you'd have to apply. So what's the treatment time versus the LEDs that are being exposed to? So that's why we came to the conclusion of 660 nanometers for the red light, 850 nanometers for the near infrared, and that dosage of a 20-minute timer up to 5 times a week. A big part of it was also the safety. So we wanted to give people the confidence that this product is safe for use in the skin. It's a non-invasive treatment, and it gives you those results. And looking at the literature review and judging by the power levels, we looked at tests that showed that for our products, you'd have to be wearing them for continuously over 5 hours of continuous use for a potential cause of some form of skin erythema, so skin reddening, which is why, we put the timer on for 20 minutes and we recommend people read the instructions, but it is 5 treatments. So we mitigate any risk and making sure that any vendors we pick also have that level of safety. So the CE certification, which is the conformity to the European standards, as well as what's known as a 501K, which is the FDA clearance, so where they've compared it to a comparable safely used device and matched that standards.
And that is so important because we know that there are plenty of other red light devices on the market. Some of them are excellent. I mean, my own personal experience, I use very effective, trusted sources. But now you can get red lights in many places and consumers are confused. And that's always the problem. When you bring sub-optimal levels of red lights onto the market, you ruin it for the ones that work. Now, at This Works, we pride ourselves on backing everything we do with scientific protocols. We started, as you said, with this very robust study. We involved Professor Gabby Bader, our neuroscience scientific advisor, in the process to also look at the role of biophotomodulation for helping cellular optimization. But really importantly, we wanted to make sure that if we put a device on the market, people can trust that it works, that it's safe and that it works. And I believe we have exactly that. We'll talk about the study because you and I spend our lives building studies that we ask consumers, people to be part of, to test whether the product lives up to the standards, expectations we set, which are very high. But we also do clinical studies to be able to measure things in a clinical way. I also just want to talk about the fact that I wanted you to give me a device that was portable and can be used everywhere, because many devices on the market, you stand in front of them, or in the case of a face mask, they go over your face and you can only use it on your face. Whereas as a body care expert, we wanted to give a red light device that you could use anywhere. So, Fraser, what did we do with that? Give me the big reveal.
So we've developed
Hope you're watching, everyone.
Well, but easily wearable. In fact, I wore this device in a company day secretly. No one knew I was wearing it for about 2 or 3 hours until we revealed it to the company. And this is the interesting thing about it. It reduces those barriers to treatment. Now, a big piece for electronic devices is adherence to the protocol. And as you said, Anna, this study went on for one of our longest periods of 3 months. Based off the research that we saw, that's how long it would take to get visible results.
Yeah.
But by using this flexible pad, it can be worn underneath clothing. It can be worn whilst you're doing anything else in your day. So I wear it on the drive into work. I've known people wear it whilst they're doing cooking or looking after the kids or just getting ready in the morning. You're not tied to a large plastic device that limits your vision, or as you said, a big bank of LEDs you have to stand in front of. This makes it really accessible to treat different areas as they can be wrapped around, whether it's around your hair, around your neck, your back or your legs. And the adjustable elastic straps also allow it to be held in place almost regardless of your body shape. And we offer a shorter band as well if you need it on our website.
And because we know from the studies, and we know because red light's been used for many, many years, this is not a new thing. In this country, it's fairly recent, but it's been used in other countries for a very long time, that it is about frequency of use. So unless you're going into a clinical setting where the power is very, very high, for everyday tech use at home, it's about repetition. Mm-hmm. And in order for people to really see the benefits and for those benefits to be enduring, they need to use it, as you said, 3 to 5 times a week, ongoing, because actually it's the mitochondrial action that's enhanced by the red light. If you stop using the red light, then the cells will go back to how they used to perform, and over time your results will fall away.
Exactly.
So having an easy to use, low friction device that you can fit into your lifestyle and keep using is really significant if you're trying to de-age your skin. I have had 2 cesareans. I'm in my mid-50s. I wanted to treat my stomach. I wanted to treat my hair loss. And I think I've managed to do both really effectively. But I commit. I use it 5 days a week without fail. I look stupid sometimes when I meet, the postman with it on my head, but he's got used to me. But we also, because we're cosmetic people, we wanted a product. And I came to you and I said, Fraser, I need a product that I can put on my body that's going to enhance the benefits of the red light, so that actually the benefits will be amplified, that they will last longer. So you picked up the challenge, did you not?
It was a really interesting piece of research because there's no one else out there really pushing this device plus this product is greater than the sum of them two together. 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
We had to delve deep into some of this research. That what we found incredibly interesting was that coenzyme Q10, which on our inkies would appear as ubiquinone, is enhanced by red light. They looked at its wound healing properties both as a light, a sham light with the ubiquinone, and also the ubiquinone on its own. So what they were doing is removing those variables. So it wasn't just a case of any old light with the CoQ10 gave an enhanced effect. It was specific to the red light frequency. And it showed that CoQ10 plus red light gave enhanced wound healing. As you said, because it's activating the mitochondrial pathways, it's increasing that cellular energy and that cellular metabolism. We then looked at how do we then put that into a product that you can apply with the red light. So applying it onto the skin, allowing it to absorb before you apply the red light on top. Essentially, it is a red light power activated serum.
And it's also got to be something we like using, right? Because there's no point creating a serum that feels sticky, that smells foul, because people don't use it. And so this product has been created, and I'm going to show it because I'm very proud of it. When you shake it, it has a little ball bearing in it, and it's a biphase serum in order to deliver the benefits. I'm just going to show you. So it comes out with an orange colour, and the serum can be quickly rubbed in. And we also just want to say that this absorption into the skin does not do anything to prevent the activation of the red light. So you can put it on your skin, you apply the red light. I mean, I would wait for it to dry down. It's a matter of seconds. You put on the red light, you wear your red light for 20 minutes, and you go about your day.
And that's the great thing about it. It's not reflecting the red light. It's working in tandem with the red light. It's not creating a barrier. It's making it more effective. And I think, to your point, it's something that you can build into your treatment routine because that serum is actually clinically proven on its own to increase skin firmness and increase skin barrier function.
We did what we call a project red light, where we had 90 people testing either one of 3 studies. They were using the red light alone, they were using the serum alone, or they used both together in order for us to be able to show consumers the benefit of the devices and the products separately, but also combined. And we have very strong results. Can we talk about hair?
Yeah.
Because this is something that was a little bit of an insight, because Fraser found this brilliant article and showed that actually coenzyme Q10 could work in improving cellular activity. The theory was, and we're a body care brand primarily. I mean, we do sleep, we do skincare, we do body care. We don't do hair. That's not been our thing. But I had a suspicion that it might work. And so we asked a group of testers, we collected a group of testers together to test their hair. We asked them to look at hair density. We asked them to look at hair quality, hair luster, shedding. What do we find, Fraser?
Like I said, these panels that we've run, these studies that we've run, have been some of the most rewarding that I've done at This Works. Part of this was because we asked for before and after images, and some really strong, compelling before and after images that these people have taken. They're not doctored, they're not taken in a professional setting. They're testimonials of people who have used this product for 3 months, and they're great. There's people who are saying that they've had the first bits of hair regrowth since postpartum. There's people who are feeling more confident about their hair regrowth. The testimonials and the belief in that product is amazing. To see the fact that it is having this non-invasive, non-surgical treatment enhancement on the hair over 3 months is something incredible. If you look at some of the other products out there which maybe are using more over-the-counter medicines, and they can take up to 6 months to 12 months to act and maybe don't even work for the majority of people, whereas this is showing some real strong evidence that it improves the skin, scalp condition, the hair condition, you said, the luster, the styleability, but then has that reduction in shedding, then followed by the signs of regrowth and increased hair density.
I mean, for me personally, I've definitely managed to regrow my temples and strengthen my hair and grow it longer. I continue with the ambition using red light and the serum. I'm a tester of what? We're scientists. We don't base it on me. We base it on a statistically significant group of people. But I think the testimonials that we've seen are very emotional, because if you're someone that, feels there's nothing they can do, and then they find actually there's improvements to be made, it gives people an option. And I think at This Works, that's very much our whole promise. So our way of bringing these products to market is quite unusual, because we want to encourage people to use enough of the product to see significant benefits. From our study, which we did a 3-month study, so we looked at them after 1, 2, and 3 months, we saw over 70% of people were seeing some kind of benefit, whether it's improvement in skin texture, smoothness, wrinkle reduction, scar reduction, cellulite reduction, hair density improvement. But we want people to continue to use the program so those results continue to improve. So, very unusually, we are going to be giving the way to launch this product as giving away the red light, really, for free. And it isn't just one red light, it's 2. So this red light body wrap, as it's referred to, is a duo, because we've got 2 legs. But we also may want to treat different body parts at the same time. So I wear it around my waist and on my head at the same time. So the duo, and it comes in a box like this, and it has 2 of them in it. It has 2 straps, so you can target areas of your body simultaneously, or give it to someone else in your family if you choose. But we are going to give it away as part of a system when people buy the serum. So 3 serums is 6 months of treatment according to our tests. They should be seeing benefits at 2 months. They'll be seeing enhanced benefits at 3 and sustained benefits over 6. And if they do this system, they buy the system, then they will get 2 red lights for free. Yeah, we're very excited because we think this will bring red light to people that at the moment haven't tried it, don't understand it, think it's too expensive, and give them the different ways to make a difference to their health and well-being.
Exactly. And I think the great thing is that it can be used, the same product can be used on both hair and body.
Exactly.
You like you said, you're wearing it in one 20-minute session, but treating 2 different target areas with the one product. You're not having to switch devices or find the different adapter or the plug. It's really reducing that barrier for you to then see those results. And I think a key point is also that although we've looked at it from the lens of a more cosmetic in terms of skin appearance, We know that there's a great benefits of red light and near infrared light on joint recovery. You know, I run and I will use it as part of my warm down routine to avoid longer term injuries. So I have a niggle. I can wrap 2 wraps around my thighs, around the ankles. You know, it promotes the recovery. But it's not even just doing running. It's any form of exertion that you find physical. That could be gardening. That could be playing with your grandchildren.
Yeah.
It allows you this moment of recovery rather than going down more of a invasive.
I think pain management, and we're a cosmetics brand, so we don't stray into pain claims because that's not our category. But we know from observation, from studies, from testers, actually pain was managed. You know, inflammation was reduced and people were able to recover more quickly from exercise or be able to, you know, have their mobility back. So there are so many benefits of red light, and I'm really excited. So congratulations for there.
Thank you. No, it's an amazing team effort. And I think one of the most this worked products that we put behind it, the studies, the clinicals, the research. There is a wealth of evidence that our consumers may not see, but they can rest assured that we have that behind us to stand behind these products.
This works. If you want to learn a quick technique to help to calm your nervous system, follow along with Fraser. We're going to do the physiological side and the 4-6 breathing technique. These breathing techniques have a lot of science evidence behind them because they are very effective at helping to bring the body from a state of agitation, fight or flight, into relaxation by changing many things within the biochemistry of the blood, but also in terms of the mechanical effect of big exhale. The physiological side is an inhale, you top it up, and you do a big exhale. And you repeat, inhale, top it up, exhale. An alternative way to change the parasympathetic sympathetic is to use an inhale for 4 and out for 6, or if you can manage it, out for 8. So you inhale, neutral breathing inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And repeat. Inhale for 4, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And repeat for 6 sessions.